Yesterday, we had our annual mutual ministry review of the Trinity vestry. I know that's a mouthful of jargon for you. Kind of a retreat for our board, in layman's terms. And we had it over at Sam Whitford and Kurt Bernhardt's house, which is a beautiful historic Victorian home up on the hill, up above the hospital. And it is decorated in the period style, with lots and lots of antiques and many fine objets d'art from Asia and all over the world. And there was one piece in particular that grabbed my attention, which was a porcelain figurine. Actually, there were two of them. Picture some Cockney street vendors, like from Mary Poppins. And there was one guy sitting and a woman standing with a black hat with flowers on it, and they were selling balloons. And I noted this because we have a figurine just like that in my family. It's an heirloom that belonged to my grandmother, who grew up in a prosperous, proud, middle-class shopkeeping family in Ontario, Canada. And it's traveled with my parents. The balloon lady has gone with them every place they've ever lived throughout my entire life. I mean, I remember it from my earliest days. And it's been back and forth across the American continent, and now resides in Madison, Wisconsin, with my younger brother Gareth, because recently, as my parents have been downsizing and moving into smaller places, they've been sort of passing on some of the heirlooms, while they're still alive. Anyway, my noting the balloon lady in Sam's house got us to talking about his various collectibles, and he pointed out some Royal Dalton china that's on display in their dining room, and talked about how much money he'd spent on it when he first started acquiring it, and how today it's practically worthless. Because the truth is, people just don't collect stuff like that anymore. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but, collecting antiques and various other kinds of bric-a-brac just isn't in. It's more like, minimalism or something. And people move around a whole lot, and, I can just speak from my own experience that when my mother wanted to pass on to one of her four sons the Royal Crown Derby fine china that also had belonged to my grandmother, nobody wanted it. And when it came to my turn, I was living in a tiny bungalow with my wife and daughter attached to All Saints Episcopal Church in Carmel, California, and there just wasn't any place to put it. So off it went to, St. Vincent de Paul. So anyway, we got on with our, from there, with more of our board retreat, talking about the church and the challenges that the church faces and the things that are going well and the things that worry us. And one of the things that worries us is that I think in the minds of a lot of folks, the church, or at least churches like this one, are kind of like the Royal Crown Derby china. a quaint curio from time past. And the saints are like, porcelain figures that you might put up on the shelf and admire for their, sort of curiosity, but they really belong to some time long ago, and they don't really apply to me and my life, and where I turn to for guidance and wisdom and inspiration. So in a society where the motto of the most admired innovators, the high technology entrepreneurs and other people who we're supposed to look up to and admire and maybe even put in charge of running things, their motto is move fast and break things. What does it mean to be a part of an institution whose motto is move slow and save things? Of course, the question is what to save. What needs to be saved? What is of the highest value? Because, truth be told, there probably is a lot about the Episcopal Church and even the Christian tradition in general that really is kind of quaint bric-a-brac that we've been dragging around behind us for longer than it really serves a purpose. But in the Bible, in the church, when we talk about the future, we don't talk about innovation exactly. We don't talk about how clever we are and how we can invent something new that is going to, change everything. Rather, we talk about an inheritance. An inheritance of the things that are of ultimate value. An inheritance of love and faith and hope. And that whatever the future is, it's going to be the fulfillment of what has been promised from the beginning. It's going to be laying hold of the fullness of that inheritance, of what is most precious and valuable and meaningful about not just human existence, but the whole creation, the whole universe, what has been gathering bit by bit, piece by piece, in the mind and the heart of God for all eternity. In the book of Daniel, today we heard about a dream that the prophet had. And in this dream he saw the great sea. The great sea, which in the Bible is kind of the symbol of the primordial, formless chaos. The unformed darkness, amorphous void, out of which God opens up a space in which creatures can live. And Daniel sees the four winds of heaven blowing around on the surface of the sea, and out of it churn up these four great beasts. These kind of monstrous creatures that are, a hideous amalgam of parts and features of different animals and people, and they come out onto the land and they're angry and they're, stomping and biting and violent and destructive. And then Daniel turns to an attendant, someone who's standing there by the throne of God, which we hear about in the portion of the reading that was taken out of the lectionary. But anyway, he asks, so interpret this for me. What are these beasts? And the attendant says, they're 4 great kings. 4 great kings whipped up out of the primordial chaos by the winds of heaven that will disappear into the primordial chaos again. But the kingdom that will endure forever is that of God and of God's saints. And I think one of the reasons why so many people in our country are so furious right now is because they're having a really hard time accepting that this wondrous modern civilization that has promised endless progress extending forever into the future, and just one miraculous technological innovation after another that will bestow upon the favored few a state of kind of material abundance and comfort and ease and bliss that will just go on and on and on without end. That it's just another beast, just another bit of froth on the surface of the great deep. Instead, we have Jesus, who comes down from the mountain, having called his chosen 12 and named them, commissioned them to be his apostles. And he comes down off the mountain onto a level place, onto the even ground, where everybody is, including all the sick and the demon-tormented. And he heals them, all the suffering, everyday people. He heals them. And then, as we read in our gospel lesson today, Jesus looks up at his disciples. Or actually, a better translation might be, a more literal translation is, he lifted up his eyes on his disciples. And this lifting up of his eyes, I like that translation better because it has some of the connotation of exaltation that is actually, I think, intended to be there in the story. It's the same action that Peter takes in the story of the Transfiguration up on the mountain when the cloud has overshadowed him and he's sort of been weighed down with this heavy slumber, and he hears the voice from the cloud, and then he lifts up his eyes and sees Jesus all alone. So what does it mean that Jesus is lifting up his eyes on his disciples? That he is seeing them as something exalted. He is seeing something in them that is of heaven. And it is with that vision of his disciples, who we know are not perfect, far from it, and yet who Jesus can see as if with the eyes of God. He opens up his mouth and starts to speak to them. And it is with this vision that he says to them, "Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Not because there's anything especially virtuous about poor people, although I have to say some of the most virtuous people I have met in my life have been poor. It's not because there's anything especially noble about being poor. It's because the poor are just bare human beings. And it's human beings who bear the image of God. That which is most precious, most worthy, most glorious about being human. Has nothing to do with all the stuff. How much wealth you accumulate, how much prestige you have in society, how much power and influence and honor. All of that is so much froth on the great void. Simply to be human, that is glorious. And when he says, blessed are those who mourn, and blessed are those who are hungry, it's not because there's anything blessed about those states, but because those states will change. The people who are going through that know that if they can endure, it will change. Something else. Something closer to their true inheritance will come to them. But the people who are rich, the people who are laughing now, the people who like to imagine that if they are just faithful subjects of one of the great beasts, that they will be able to stay that way forever, that nothing will change, they will be rich forever, they'll be laughing forever. They're really in for a very disappointing surprise. And when Jesus goes on to talk in these kind of impossible terms about loving one's enemy, about praying for those who curse you and those who abuse you, about, giving to those who ask of you. Even if someone asks for your coat, give them your shirt as well. He's not giving us new rules to follow, but is speaking as one speaks who can see that every human being is a child of God, bears within them the Spirit of God, something precious, something imperishable, something truly worthwhile and glorious. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because they are you in the only respect that really matters. They are also children of God, beloved, created for the praise of God's glory. To be human is to live in communion. And that is what we say about the saints. We live in a communion of saints with all the other children of God and with God, God's self. In a loving communion that embraces the whole of creation. And when we can see that, then we know what our true inheritance is. And that's what Paul prays for the people in the church in Ephesus. He prays that the eyes of their hearts will be enlightened, so that they can see the way Jesus sees. And when you see the way Jesus sees, you start to act accordingly. You start to relate to other people as Jesus did. as one member of a glorious and imperishable inheritance, treats another. One in whom that which is of most value is reflected back to you.